Hello, my name is Caroline Hull and I'm the National Director of Aid to the Church in Need UK. And welcome to this edition of ACN's Break the Silence podcast. I'm here today with my friend, Father Remigius Ihyula from the Diocese of Makurdi in the Middle Belt of Nigeria. Hello, Father Remi.
Good to see you, Caroline.
It's lovely to have you here today. Father
Thank
Remi
you.
is visiting us here in the UK, and we wanted to jump on today to just do a quick podcast to have a little bit of a chat about when I went to visit the Middle Belt last April. I went to visit, and I'd met you earlier, hadn't I? We met a couple of years ago at ACN International.
Yeah.
And when I came to Makurdi, you very kindly came all the way up to Jos in Plateau State to fetch us, drove down with us to Benue State.
Yeah.
And Father Remi took us into some IDP camps. Those are camps with internally displaced people in Benue State. And that was a life-changing and faith-changing day for me. It was unbelievable. We went into two camps, I think, Ortezi and Ihyula.
Yes.
And it was in Ortezi was the sort of slightly better circumstances. Yeah. So there were some structures people were staying in.
Yeah.
But that's where the awful water, I remember the brown water.
Exactly.
So it was heartbreaking to see what people were going through, but I was really moved when people saw you. So can you just tell us a bit about, when you go to visit, what are the pastoral needs of the people you're helping?
Okay, so thank you for having me here, and I'm grateful for all the work that you're doing, not just for those of us you have met already, but for the many Christians who are persecuted around the world. Like you have just said, what you saw is typical of what my day on a regular day will be in the IDP camps. All of those people know me. So usually when I go, there are expectations because they are living in those circumstances, needing a lot of things, needing food. You mentioned water. Water is an issue. Sometimes there are problems with their health, so they need some support to go to hospital and things like that. When you came, there was already a huge challenge because MSF, that is Medicine Sans Frontieres, had already exited the camp. So there was huge challenge. The problem is still there because there has not been a healthcare provider that has come to
their medical
help.
Care.
Exactly.
Okay.
So there are needs like that. So we do try as a church to give the support that we can. We don't have all the resources given the number of people in the IDP camps, but we do try to do our bit. Mostly we concentrate on giving them food. Because even though they have other needs, when they don't eat, it is triple the problems they will have. So our focus has always been to provide food support and to give them some other basic needs that will ease their life. It's not really to say that we help them, but to ease the suffering and the pain that they're going through.
And when I was there, both at Ortezi and Ihyula, which was even more heartbreaking. Ihyula was some of our benefactors may have seen because we wrote a report about it, and I think I used some photos. As far as the eye could see, there were those just little mounds. People were living in, it's a kind of like, sort of like shaped like an igloo with sort of fabric on the top.
Yeah, so that is one of the major problems we have with the displacement situation in Benue State is that there are constant displacements. Even as I speak to you today, maybe there are cases of fresh attacks. So when those things happen, people have to run away and seek shelter. So when they do come, sometimes they have to fend for themselves. So that is why you saw what you saw. There are some places that international organizations like IOM or UNHCR have tried to build shelters, but the numbers are so much that they just
have to fend for
exactly.
themselves.
It's like a drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
You were in
Yeah.
OTC. So
Yeah.
in spite of the fact that you saw some makeshift shelters, there are many who don't have those shelters.
Anything. And we were there. It was 40 degrees. Do you remember? It was so hot.
Exactly.
And it was before the rainy season. And ever since then, I've thought, how did they manage when it started to rain?
Yeah, exactly. And the places you went to are the shelters, are the camps that are by the roadside. There are others that are in the interior. So you can imagine what those places are like.
Once it really
and you're correct,
rain.
because when it starts to rain, that is where the major problem, that is when another major problem has to confront us, because then we have to look for blankets and mosquito nets, because there are mosquitoes are a terrible thing for us in Africa. And to imagine that there are infants in those conditions, only God.
I met a woman in one of the camps who'd had two twins. She'd given birth by cesarean in the camp. And I just thought, oh my goodness. And it's mostly women of all ages and children, some men, but not very many. And what's the makeup? So Benue stage is almost entirely Christian.
Yes.
So the people in the camps are Christians.
Entirely. There will be 94% Catholic.
Most of them are Catholic. Yes. Okay, I wasn't sure. They were certainly... I just want everyone to know what I was really moved by was when we went in, and there we were, obviously coming. I think we probably had Aid to the Church in Need T-shirts, so they knew we were Aid to the Church in Need, and they were glad to see us, and they were showing us their water and where they lived, but their eyes lit up when they saw Father Remi. And I have photographs, and I have little videos of all the children waving, and just, you going and being there with them just seemed to mean everything.
I've tried to take a lot of people who visit us to those places, and sometimes some sisters came from Rome, and they didn't even want to leave the camps because they felt that like coming to live with IDPs. But that camp particularly lighted up because Aid to the Church in Need is very famous in that camp. We did a program there speaking to some people who had lost loved ones. There are women who are widowed there. There is a woman in that particular IDP camp whose 4 sons were killed.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so there are stories like that. So some of the children actually you see in those camps are heading families themselves. There are child-headed households. Because they're orphaned as a result
They've had to take on the responsibility.
Yes. So to go back to why they were excited seeing Aid to the Church in Need, we brought materials from Aid to the Church in Need to their camps. We gave them, and each one we gave them mats, we gave them blankets, we gave them mosquito nets, and we also gave food from Aid to the Church in Need. So it was fresh in their minds when you came. It was still fresh in their minds. I could remember that. Aid to the Church in Need did intervene in our camp and things like that.
Well, we're glad we can help, and I know our benefactors want to do whatever they possibly can to help. And it's a completely different definition of pastoral need, isn't it? Yes. In a place like that.
Yes.
So as you say, there's the emergency aid, the food and the blankets and the mats people can sleep on, but also, like I said, their little faces, the children, really lit up when you got there. So it must be also that you're providing the other kinds of support.
Yes.
They need spiritual support and sort of a bit of authority and that kind of friendship.
And children, this is one of the things that is beautiful. And our Lord said, you must welcome the kingdom as a little child. So they have that freshness in them that in spite of what is happening around them, they're still able to be joyful and happy. I remember sometimes when I travel and I'm able to bring rosaries back to them, I take the rosaries to them, maybe some medals, and sometimes we buy biscuits for them. But importantly, we're trying to also organize some little sporting activities for these little ones to play, to occupy themselves and things like that. So they connect easily when they see the people who are coming to be with them and to try to give them some sense of belonging. That is why they were lighted up that way.
And what about any sort of education or schooling that goes on for them?
Yes, we the bishop has tried to do something, what we call education in emergency. He started it as his own pet project. He has built 2 schools already, close to the IDP camps, so that the IDP children are able to access these schools. But above all, he has also tried to seek funding from donor agencies. ACN, we must say, and we are grateful to the church in need, especially the donors and the benefactors for the help they're giving you people to give us. Because as I speak to you, there are 50 students who are on the bishop scholarship from the church in need. There are also some other students who are on that scholarship that are paid for by another foundation in Rome, and also the bishop's own contribution also. But this is full scholarship. Students are put in the best of schools. You visited some of those schools.
I visited Our Lady of Mount Carmel.
Yes, Mount Carmel. Yes, they're put in the best of schools, and we did that deliberately so that tomorrow they will say that, oh, the church was deliberate in helping us, and so that is what we're trying to do. The needs are so much because some students have been out of school for like 10 years, 12 years, 13 years. So they have been like that. If we have more resources, we'll take more of those students to school, because we do know that taking them to school will be the best option now. And it is also a healing process for them. If you speak to some of the students, they'll tell you that sometimes we don't want to go back to our homes, to the IDP camps, because it is terrible living in those places. But the school provides us an opportunity to walk away from the pain that we live in. So the appeal is to try to get more funding to take more of these school-age students back to school, so that we can give them a future. Beside giving them the formal education that is provided in the school setup, we have also provided situations for them to learn informally.
Right. So in the camps there, I noticed when we were there were some shaded areas that looked like there was informal kind of, some of it was mother and baby groups, but some of it was some people with some older children.
Yes. And so we're trying to see if we can expand those kind of opportunities too, so that they can have their opportunities, not completely taken away from them, but they can have some sense of belonging.
I just want briefly to tell the listeners a story about a girl called Alex. Father Remi introduced me to her, and she was fantastic. She just had it all going on. She was confident, and she didn't look at me, but I can't remember whether it was you or someone else said that it's disrespectful to so you don't meet someone's. So she kind of looked off to the side, except for 1 minute. She told me her story, and like many of these children, her family, these people are coming from agricultural villages, and they're forced to flee very often with nothing. And it's difficult where they end up for them to have any sort of income, because they're agricultural people and they're off their land. So they really are stuck. And Alex told me this story, and how, she and her family fled and they were in an IDP camp, and it was terrible. And she just said, I just felt like my life was over. I think she was about 13. And then she did look right at me and she said, and then I took one of those tests and now I have a scholarship from the bishop. And she just looked at me and she said, you gave me my life back. And, my first thought was, I didn't, ACN helped. ACN benefactors are the people who did that. So I need to say a huge thank you to our benefactors from Alex and from ACN. But it just changed. And she said, now I'm here. She was so proud in her uniform. And I know that there are other children and young people who feel exactly like that. So it's the most wonderful gift.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, there is a story, a very, very touching story. A woman who lost 6 of her sons.
Oh, goodness.
And killed brutally. So she is now having custody of the grandchildren. And she has to put them to school. So I invited them for what we call Parent-Teachers Association meetings. I don't know if we have something similar
here. PTA or PTA?
Yeah, PTA. It's PTA. So, and she kept raising her hands, and then we asked her to speak. She said she just wanted to be grateful to whoever is giving us the resources to put these these school-age children back to school. And she is a beneficiary because all her sons, 6 of them, were killed like that because the Fulanis attacked a village in the night. Usually the attacks takes place in the wee hours of the night, around 2 a.m., 3 a.m., when you are beginning to enjoy your sleep. So they come surround the villages. And so when it happened, she lost as many as those. So, so she now has to, and one of her sons benefited from the scholarship. We're trying to see if we can bring more of the children left behind for her so that she can. So those are the kind of stories that we have. And there are people who completely could not go forward, could not further their education, but because of the help we are getting from Aid to the Church in Need, we are able to do this noble work. So it is not us, it is to you people and to your benefactors.
It's to benefactors.
Yes, to your benefactors. We're thankful.
I think I can speak on behalf of our benefactors to say that we're all very happy, delighted to be able to help.
Then I wanted to make another point. Speaking of agricultural villages, like you went to one of those villages.
Mbalam.
Yes,
Mbalam. They're fantastic children.
Yes, you stayed many hours.
Yes.
This is one of the best experience. That was one of the best days of your visit because you spent almost an entire day with these communities, and you saw as you drove out.
Yes.
You remember some young men who were playing at the game of drought. And they told you, they said they can't even go to their farms because the Fulanis are occupying the farms. And as we drove out, the Fulanis, lo and behold, were grazing.
Yeah, they were right there.
Exactly.
There were Fulani herdsmen. There were some sort of shrubs.
Exactly.
There were Fulani herdsmen on the other side, and then there were tiny villages with just sort of half a dozen kind of grass.
Yeah, so huts. you saw that. You said you stayed. In fact, and Caroline and the others did fantastic because they ate the local food, whatever was served, and they enjoyed it. They were playful.
I took videos. I was videoing. I had an iPad,
and
I took videos of these children, and the children were waving, and then I would show them the video, and they would wave back. It was wonderful. And I met a woman there called Bridget, who'd lost her husband when that village, when Mbalam was burned, and that was one of the ones where, if it's not the middle of the night, it's very often while people are at mass or preparing for mass or during the Holy Week, or the Triduum, or Christmas. It's at times when people are together in church, and that's what happened in Mbalam, right? And the priest was killed. Both priests were killed.
2 priests were killed,
and Bridget's husband, and the youngest one was only sort of 7 or something, because we saw their graves at the shrine. It was really sad, but the children were. I felt they were joyful and they were supported, and. I was glad. I felt, but they did seem so exposed. It really is in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it was sort of 45 minutes or an hour off of the road to get there.
Yeah, but you see, those people, even though it's in the middle of nowhere, they had their farms. They could eat from their farms. They could literally do everything with their farms. So that is what has been taken away from them.
Yeah. And I just have one final question, and this might be a slightly hard one, but you and the other clergy I met all over the Middle Belt are working so hard and supporting people in heartbreaking circumstances. Where's the support for you? Is there, I mean, I know ACN in some parts of it offers, psycho-spiritual counseling and helps train people. And I think a lot of times that goes outward to the people in the camps. But I worry so much about the sisters and the priests and the bishops. And so how are you coping? Yeah,
so it's difficult, but I must say that sometimes we fall back to the fact that our situation is, no matter how bad the situation is, our situation is better than the people who are living in the IDP camps. So I say to myself, I can't be complaining because some people have been reduced to live in this kind of situation. It's not any fault of theirs. It's just because the government of the day has not done anything, and we do know that there are some elements of religious persecution on the need and the intention to make the whole place some sort of Islamic territory. But They will come out and deny. But we say, okay, if you're denying, prove to us that this is not it. You can't allow your citizens to live in IDP camps in that kind of conditions for many years. We're not talking about 5 years. We're talking 10 years, 12 years, for like that. So the denier just makes one very annoyed. But to go back to the question you asked, for me, I don't know of other people. I always tell myself, if I'm complaining, what will these people, how will they feel? My situation is a lot better than theirs. And the church in Nigeria, the Catholic Church in Nigeria, in spite of the poverty, the people still are able to contribute. Those who are not, who have not been driven away from their own livelihoods, are still able to. It's not much, but it is able to take care of the priest if the priest is actually a priest. And you should help sustain him. And of course, like you said, sometimes there are helps that come from outside. ATD Church in Need is one that gives some aid to the dioceses and stuff like that. So it is tough, but God is faithful.
They're okay.
God is faithful.
Well, I would like you to know on behalf of our team here in the UK and our benefactors that all of the people who are suffering in the Middle Belt, all of the people in the IDP camps, all of the people who feel isolated and who feel alone are in our prayers, and so are you.
Yeah.
And all the priests, all the sisters, all the bishops who are working so hard to look after everything and to keep the church strong in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sparing the time for this chat. It's really nice to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you too.
Thank you all for coming on to listen to the podcast. And please do share this podcast with your friends. Follow us on social media and have a look for other episodes of Break the Silence on whatever podcast platform you prefer to use.
If we still have 1 minute, I wanted to take the minute to say a big thank you to ATD Church in Need. Not just to Caroline and to those of you who are working in the UK office, but to your international offices. I know a lot of people. I know Marcella, I know Mara Lozano, and the others who have met in the United States also. Why I'm saying this is because we, for a long time, suffered in silence until ATD Church in Need came on the scene. It was when we met people like Marcella and yourself that our stories now began to go out, and there'll be more opportunities to tell our story, to tell the world what is happening. Sometimes there is the political correctness that we keep talking about from a lot of people, even in high places, clergy, politicians, there are people who are just comfortable saying, oh, let us be quiet. Maybe because it has not happened to their relatives or in their villages. So we are grateful to the ATD Church in Need.
Wow.
And we pray for you people that God will bless your efforts.
That's it. #BreakTheSilence. Thank you very much, Father Remi.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.